We've secured 2,000 acres for the future of our community." Linda Carmichael's voice echoed through the fluorescent-lit clubhouse like she was announcing the second coming. My jaw actually hit the plastic table in front of me. 2,000 acres, future of our community. She was talking about my land. Our community? She was talking about my land. My family's ranch that had been in our name since before half these cul-de-sacs even existed. The smug smile on her face told me everything. This wasn't some slip of the tongue. This was Linda at her peak queen of the HOA, crowned in pearls and self-importance, declaring victory over land she didn't own. People clapped. They actually clapped. The same neighbors who once borrowed sugar from my grandmother were now applauding the theft of her legacy, like they'd just been promised free pools and golf courses. And I sat there, trying not to laugh, because the absurdity of it all was almost comical. Almost. To really understand this circus, you've got to know who Linda Carmichael is. She's the type who sends friendly reminders about your trash cans being visible from the street, then calls code enforcement if you ignore her. The kind who wears a blazer to the HOA potluck and insists everyone call her Madam President. She wasn't elected so much as installed railroaded in during a meeting where half the neighborhood thought they were voting on landscaping budgets. And ever since, she's treated the subdivision like her personal kingdom. Now, apparently, that kingdom extended into my family's ranch. The announcement came at the monthly HOA meeting, one of those gatherings where 20 people show up but only 3 do the talking. The folding chairs creaked, kids tapped iPads in the corner, and the air smelled faintly of Costco cookies and burnt coffee. I was half listening, flipping through the packet of bylaws they'd passed out, when Linda cleared her throat and stood at the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, in that sing-song voice she saves for power plays, "I'm pleased to inform you that the association has finalized acquisition of 2,000 acres to the north of our development. This will allow us to expand amenities, preserve green space, and increase property values for every homeowner here." I froze. 2,000 acres north of the development was me. My ranch. A guy in the back raised his hand. "Wait, I thought that land belonged to the—" Linda cut him off with a sharp smile. "It's been secured through county channels, perfectly legal, all in the name of community progress." Her words buzzed in my ears like static. Perfectly legal? That land was under my name, my deed, my taxes. I fumbled for my phone, pulled up the county assessor's site, and sure enough, there it was. Parcel Nugger 1827, 2,000 acres listed under Homeowners Association of Silver Pines. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a simple clerical typo. Someone had filed paperwork. Someone had moved deeds. Someone had stolen my land. "Excuse me," I said, my voice louder than I expected. "That acreage doesn't belong to this HOA. It belongs to my family." The room went quiet. Every chair squeaked as heads turned toward me. Linda's expression didn't flinch. If anything, her smile grew sharper, like she'd been waiting for me to object. "Well," she said sweetly, "that's interesting, because according to the records at the county office, it's already in our possession. If you have concerns, you're welcome to submit them in writing." The smugness dripping off her words made me want to leap across the table. Submit in writing? Like I was disputing a late fee for grass length? She had taken 2,000 acres of ranch land and rolled it into community green space, and she wanted me to file paperwork? That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, ranch maps spread out like war plans, flipping between dusty deed copies and the county website. Every record, every signature pointed to one thing. Linda hadn't just stumbled onto my property by mistake. She'd orchestrated it. The kicker? She'd used HOA funds to pay the filing fees, disguising it under legal expenses in the annual budget. I found it buried in last quarter's meeting minutes, $4,800 transferred out, approved with barely a word. No one had asked questions. No one ever asked questions when Linda spoke. I kept hearing her voice in my head. Perfectly legal. By the next morning, rumors were already spreading through the neighborhood Facebook group. Half the posts were celebratory dreaming about parks and trails, picturing property values skyrocketing. The other half were confused, asking how the HOA suddenly owned 2,000 acres. Linda, of course, was in the comments, swatting down doubts like flies, promising transparency and a bright future for Silver Pines. But there was one post, one little comment buried in the thread that caught my eye. "Check the bylaws," it said. "If they can acquire land, they can lose it too." That was when the spark lit. I showed up at the next HOA board session, packet of county records under my arm, voice steady even though my pulse thundered. I laid the evidence on the table, every deed, every timestamp, every dollar Linda had siphoned. The other board members shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other like kids caught with their hands in the cookie jar. Linda just leaned back in her chair, sipping from her stainless steel tumbler. "Mr. Parker," she said, cool as ice, "I suggest you consult an attorney before making wild accusations. The association has done everything by the book." Her tone was final, dismissive, the way a judge bangs a gavel. But in that moment, I made myself a silent promise. If Linda wanted to play legal games, I'd play harder. This wasn't just about 2,000 acres anymore. It was about power, about principle, about a woman who thought she could bend laws and neighbors to her will. So I smiled back at her, just as smug, and said, "Oh, I'll be seeing an attorney. You can count on that." The room crackled with tension. The neighbors shifted, whispers breaking out like sparks. Linda's smile faltered just slightly, and for the first time, I saw it. A flicker of doubt behind her eyes. And that's when I knew this was only the beginning. Linda Carmichael's perfectly painted smile froze. Neighbors still clustered around her pool as if they were extras in some soap opera. The envelope sat there between the cheese plate and the citronella candle, bold black letters screaming, "Summons." For the first time since I'd known her, Linda didn't have a line ready. She just stared, lips trembling, Chardonnay dripping down her wrist where the glass had spilled. That moment, that single second when the queen of the HOA looked human, was worth every late night I'd spent at the county courthouse. Because here's the thing. The deeper I dug into the HOA's records, the uglier it got. Bylaws written like trapdoors, signatures forged so sloppily it was insulting, expenses tucked under legal contingency, like anyone would believe $4,000 was spent on photocopying. But the crown jewel was in Section 7, sub-paragraph C. The HOA holds collective lien authority over all member properties to secure debts, obligations, or acquisitions. In plain English, they hadn't just stolen my land. By filing that acquisition through the HOA, Linda had tied every single homeowner's deed into the mess. Their houses, their mortgages, their backyards all collateral for a fraud. And I wasn't the only one starting to notice. It began with whispers. First, a post on the neighborhood Facebook page. "Did anyone else notice our HOA fees went up $50 after the land deal?" Then another. "Why are our homes listed under the county's HOA holdings?" Pretty soon, the feed was less about lost cats and lawn services and more like a conspiracy board. Linda kept swooping in with reassurances. "Don't worry, this is for our community's future." But the cracks were showing. The turning point came at the emergency board meeting she called to address misinformation. She strutted in wearing her signature blazer and pearls, gavel in hand like she was chairing the Supreme Court. The clubhouse smelled like burnt coffee and nerves. "Let me be clear," she announced, voice dripping with authority. "The association has acted fully within its rights. There is no risk to any homeowner's property." I raised my hand. "Then why," I asked, holding up a copy of the bylaws, "does Section 7 specifically state that any acquisition by the HOA places a lien on all member properties until debts are satisfied?" The room erupted in murmurs. One guy muttered, "Lien, on my house?" A woman clutched her folder like it was a life vest. Linda banged the gavel. "That clause is standard, irrelevant. Funny, I said, flipping to the financial report, because the county record shows the HOA paid nearly $5,000 in filing fees for the land, which means every homeowner here is technically on the hook for that expense. If the deal collapses, so does your collateral. The murmurs grew into a storm. One neighbor stood. Linda, is that true? Did you put our homes up as collateral without telling us? Her smile flickered. This is all being blown out of proportion. But it was too late. The room smelled blood. That night, my inbox lit up like a Christmas tree. Neighbors who had ignored me for weeks were suddenly eager to chat about strategy. One even left a voicemail whispering like he was plotting a coup. "We're with you. Just tell us what to do." Which is how I found myself at the courthouse 2 days later, filing suit against the HOA and its president personally for fraudulent conveyance of property. The clerk barely raised an eyebrow. Apparently, she'd seen worse. But I knew, as I slid those papers across the counter, that this was the first real blow in a war Linda never expected anyone to fight. Serving her was the cherry on top. She was by the pool, of course. Linda never missed a chance to host her little court of loyalists margaritas flowing, music low, gossip higher. She was mid-story, laughing about how she outsmarted some rancher. Her words, not mine, when the process server walked up in his khakis and sunglasses. "Linda Carmichael?" he asked, monotone. "Yes," she said, already beaming like she was about to get an invitation to another charity gala. "You've been served." He dropped the envelope on the table and walked away. The laughter died instantly. The music seemed to sputter. And there she sat, Chardonnay pooling on the flagstones, her kingdom watching her crumble in real time. I wasn't there, but I heard about it from 3 different neighbors before the sun set. By the next morning, screenshots were flying around the Facebook group. Memes, even. Someone photoshopped Linda's face onto the Monopoly man, captioned, "Bankrupt." For the first time, she didn't comment. No damage control, no cheery posts. Just silence. But silence has a sound if you listen closely. It's the crackle of fear, of loyalties shifting, of neighbors realizing their queen can bleed. And I knew, deep down, this was only her first fracture. Because once people smell weakness in an HOA president, they don't stop. That night, I sat at my kitchen table again, staring at the thick stack of bylaws, red pen notes scribbled all over. Somewhere in there was more than just a defense. Somewhere in there was the weapon I needed to finish this fight once and for all. And as I read by the light of a single lamp, one line jumped out at me like it had been waiting all along. In the event of insolvency, the HOA may liquidate member properties to satisfy debts. My hand froze. Liquidate. The word echoed in my head like a gavel strike, and suddenly I realized Linda hadn't just tied their homes into her scheme. She'd put the whole neighborhood on the chopping block, and I intended to be the one swinging the axe. If you've never seen a neighborhood unravel in real time, let me tell you, it's loud, it's messy, and it smells faintly of panic sweat mixed with lawn fertilizer. Cars crawled past like vultures, windows rolled down to gawk at the spectacle. Neighbors whispered on driveways, clutching wine tumblers like lifelines, while kids kicked soccer balls around "for sale" signs as if they were goalposts. The Queen's kingdom wasn't just cracking anymore, it was collapsing, one parcel at a time. How did we get here? Simple. I took Linda's playbook and read it cover to cover, then weaponized it against her. Remember that line buried in the bylaws about liquidation in the event of insolvency? Turns out the HOA was already insolvent the moment they pushed through the fraudulent land purchase. Every dollar spent on filing fees, every legal expense rubber-stamped by the board, every cent of debt racked up under Linda's smug watch, it all added up to one brutal truth. Silver Pines was broke. And broke HOAs don't hold power. Broke HOAs get stripped bare. So I filed the motion. The court appointed a trustee, and just like that, the homes Linda swore she was protecting became assets on the chopping block. I didn't even have to bend a rule. All I had to do was shine a flashlight on the mess she created. The letters went out first. Certified envelopes, stamped official and terrifying, landing in mailboxes like bombs. Notice of intent to liquidate. I swear I could hear the collective gasp ripple down Maple Drive the morning everyone tore them open. By noon, my phone was lighting up with frantic voicemails, half furious, half desperate. Tell me this isn't real. You can't sell my house, I've got kids in school here. Is there a way to, pay you off directly? I didn't return most of them. Not yet. Linda, of course, tried to rally. She called an emergency board meeting, though half the board had already resigned. The clubhouse smelled like mildew and desperation that night, folding chairs nearly empty. This is temporary, she insisted, pacing at the front like a caged tiger. Her pearls glistened under the fluorescent lights, but her voice wavered. We'll appeal. We'll fight this in court. No one is losing their homes. A man in the back stood up, face red, letter clutched in his hand. My house is listed for liquidation next month. Next month, Linda. How do you explain that? Her answer? Silence. The longest, most damning silence I'd ever heard in that clubhouse. By the time the first realtor signs hit the ground, even her most loyal loyalists had turned. I watched from the sidewalk as Linda stormed out onto her lawn, clutching the wooden post like she could rip it out with her bare hands. The realtor smiled politely. Sorry, ma'am. Court order? Her scream could have shattered glass. It spread fast after that. Every cul-de-sac, every block, another row of signs. Some families packed in quiet horror, blinds drawn, boxes stacking on porches. Others lashed out, cursing Linda's name loud enough to echo off stucco walls. It wasn't just property anymore. It was betrayal made visible, hammered into front lawns for the world to see. And through it all, I kept my eyes on the prize, my 2,000 acres. The trustees' report confirmed it fraudulent acquisition, null and void. Within weeks, the county deed office officially restored the land back to my family's name. When I drove out there, dust kicking up behind my truck, I felt something I hadn't in months. Peace. The cattle could graze again, the fences could stand tall, and the ranch would live on. But don't mistake peace for mercy. Because as I stood at the fence line, looking back toward the sprawl of silver pines, I knew this wasn't over. Linda hadn't lost her house yet, her palatial symbol of control. She was fighting tooth and nail, filing appeals, begging anyone who'd listen. At the last board session she attended, she was a shadow of herself. Eyeliner smudged, voice ragged. They can't do this, she muttered, half to the room, half to herself. This is my neighborhood, my community. And I leaned forward, meeting her bloodshot eyes, and said quietly enough that only she could hear. Not anymore. The look on her face, I'll carry that forever. The realization that she hadn't just lost 2,000 acres. She'd lost the kingdom she built on lies, brick by brick, lawn by lawn. The irony? The very neighbors she lorded over were the ones hammering the nails into her coffin. I heard rumors some of them were already planning a class action against her personally. Others wanted her banned from the subdivision entirely. One bold soul even floated the idea of renaming the neighborhood park Carmichael's Folly. As for me, I wasn't done, not by a long shot. Because while Linda fought to save her home, I discovered something in the financials, a detail no one else had noticed. A second set of accounts. Funds siphoned off under a different HOA shell, hidden in plain sight, tied directly to Linda's signature. So, yes, I had my land back. Yes, I'd watched her empire crumble in front of her neighbors. But now I had something better. Proof that this wasn't incompetence or a bad gamble. This was theft. And next time I confronted Linda Carmichael, it wouldn't be with realtor signs. It would be with handcuffs.